Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. What are some revealing insights from none other than Gervonta Davis, Floyd Mayweather's former fighter and former protege, Gervonta, who says he says all this bullshit, but in Dubai and can't leave because he's been taking people's money and not doing what they paid him to do. The guy's a fucking hater. He posted this to his Instagram stories. He was asked about it on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Gervonta said he's got to pay them people that money back. If I'm lying, then tell him to go live right now. Who are them people? Who is it that Gervonta Davis is referring to that Floyd Mayweather owes all of this money to? So much money that he's basically being held hostage in Dubai. What is Floyd's current economic standing? Is he broke? Has he burnt through all of the cash he generated back when he was an active fighter? All of the money that he generated when he was fighting. I remember a few years ago that 50 Cent, who used to be friends with Floyd, he said he was broke. People didn't want to believe it. Yeah, they thought 50 Cent was just taking shots at the guy the same way that 50 takes shots at everybody. But then you start seeing Floyd doing all of these exhibition matches, some bigger than others. Some that leave you scratching your head. The Logan Paul exhibition match I could understand because Logan Paul does have some stature and a lot of people behind him, a lot of followers on social media, a very popular podcast. I could see why he did the exhibition match with that guy. But what about with his old sparring partner, Don Moore? What? Or that guy in the UK, Chalmers? On the Zeus Network. An exhibition match here stateside with John Gotti's grandson. I mean, if it were John Gotti, if John Gotti were still alive, I could understand that, but an exhibition with his grandson? You're doing exhibition matches with these D-list celebrities? For what reason? Are you strapped for cash? The frequency of these exhibition matches over time at least led me to believe that maybe Floyd's hard up for money, that now that he's not an active fighter anymore, not generating what he used to generate when he was an active fighter, though still spending money at the same rate that he used to when he was an active fighter, that has left Floyd so inclined to keep fighting, in a manner of speaking, even if it's just in exhibition matches with D-list celebrities, that whatever he made when he was an active fighter, he may have burned through it. Been hearing rumors like this for years. The latest seems to suggest that he owes some people money over there in Dubai and he's being held hostage. That's according to Gervonta. According to Connor Ben. Connor says, "Oi, Floyd Mayweather, pay your jewelry debts, you fraud." What the hell's Connor got to do with all of this? Word travels fast. The way that Floyd's been moving the last couple of years, the frequency of exhibition matches, and just this feeling that this guy's not the businessman that he presents himself to be. You know, I remember when Floyd was an active fighter. He was perceived as being this very crafty, business-savvy boxer. That was the perception. Looking back, though, I don't think that was the reality. The reality of it was that while Floyd was very popular and he was very successful, generating a lot of money from the fights that he was in, that success did not carry over outside of the ring. Some people say he never even got all of his money, that Al Heyman was holding this guy's money for him and paying him
in increments.
I've heard that said before, just like I've heard it said before that Floyd has burned through all of his cash, that the overhead of his lifestyle finally caught up to him because he's not generating those vast sums of cash anymore. He's retired.
Well, what does all this have to do with him owing people money in Dubai?
That if he were making the money that he used to make, he wouldn't owe those people any money in Dubai because he'd have the money to pay them.
That there's no good reason for a fighter who's generated as much money in the sport of boxing as Floyd to have outstanding debts.
No good reason for it. All of these big pay-per-views, some of the biggest that the sport has ever seen, that there's no way Floyd should owe anybody money. You should have the money to pay your debts. And that word is traveling from Dubai over to America that this guy's in trouble with the sharks.
You must be broke.
Looking at this, I just feel like for all of Floyd's talk about his smart investments and just trying to pass himself off as some kind of a savvy, crafty business guy, he was anything but. You made a lot of money when you were boxing, but you're not boxing anymore.
That's all it was.
Yeah, you were generating a lot of money back when you were an active boxer. You were generating a lot of money before, but you're not generating that now. That his financial literacy.
Where did all the money go? On cars that depreciate in value as soon as you drive them off the lot?
On jewelry to keep up appearances, on watches because you ain't got enough watches. These spending habits.
And his affinity for material possessions.
What I notice about a lot of these tycoons and these guys that have got more money than you can think of and more money than you can count, more than you could spend in a lifetime, is they place no emphasis on material possessions. To those individuals, they're just things. Whereas to Floyd, they're status symbols.
To communicate status.
Where the creme de la creme really don't have to. They don't have to buy an expensive watch or some jewelry, a car.
But Floyd does, to keep up appearances.
Due to his success in the boxing ring, Floyd was deified in the minds of many. All the while, he had the same financial literacy of your average 20-year-old.
Not just back then, but now. He still brags about what purchases he's making, what frivolities.
Frivolous spending can catch up to almost anyone. It caught up to MC Hammer quite famously, that whether you're talking about musicians, actors, athletes,
can catch up to anyone because you're spending more money on frivolities than you're bringing in.
So when word gets around that a Floyd Mayweather may be in deep with the sharks over there in Dubai, and it's his own former fighter saying it, his old protege.
I'm not surprised.
Been saying it for years. Yeah, Floyd might have generated a lot of money when he was boxing, but he's only cosplaying a business guy.
Like Ted DiBiase in the WWE, the $1 Million Man.
It's just a character, or how every rapper with a shiny gold chain isn't exactly El Chapo on the streets.
In spite of what they might say in a song.
You're not actually operating on the level of a Pablo Escobar, and you never were. It's just a character.
That applies to Floyd.
It's not that he didn't generate the money that he was generating, it's that he's not as financially literate, he's not the businessman that he presents himself to be.
Doesn't have good money management.
Men's super lightweight or welterweight news. On the heels of this past weekend's action, Ryan Garcia seems to be confirming the purse amounts dispersed to both him and Devin Haney. It's said that Ryan made approximately $50 million from the fight, and Devin made approximately $35, and what those purse amounts would indicate, if they did in fact make that much, are robust viewing figures for the pay-per-view. Devin on his own social media said, "If you thought I made 35, think again. Think bigger, bitch."
What does this mean?
Well, if the purses they made are in that neighborhood, what that would suggest is that this pay-per-view must have done robust numbers. Robust numbers in the absence of, say, Gervonta Davis.
Well, what about him?
Ever since he fought Ryan Garcia last year, and that pay-per-view did as well as it did, in excess of 1 million pay-per-view buys, the discussion has been as to why. Why did it do so well when Gervonta was already on pay-per-view 5 times before that, and he never did those numbers? Where some would have you believe that he is the driving force, or was, for the show, those numbers, that he is the heir apparent to become the face of boxing. This would suggest otherwise.
These numbers would suggest that Ryan's the reason that pay-per-view did as well as it did, because here he is again on pay-per-view with somebody else, and it still did big numbers.
It would have had to if what Ryan made is in the neighborhood of 50 million, and what Devin made is in the neighborhood of 35, it would have had to have done robust numbers.
Yeah, but what's Devin bragging about? He lost.
Maybe he did, but 35 million or over 35 million, that's a lot of money for his troubles. That could have been Rolly Romero's money. Remember, before we got here, it was supposed to be Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero, and Rolly so chose to walk away from this fight to go fight on an undercard against Isaac Cruz, which backfired.
Rolly said Heyman convinced him to do it.
Al Heyman, who's often said to look out for his guys and look out for the fighter, was he looking out for Rolly when he told him to do that? Because it seems to have costed Rolly a lot of money.
He would have still lost.
Yeah, he probably would have still lost like he lost to Isaac Cruz. Yeah, he probably would have lost like Devin lost. But he would have got a lot of money for it. A lot of money for his troubles.
I suppose the silver lining is that on the heels of his big win this past weekend, Ryan is talking about potentially fighting Rolly. He named 3 people: Sebastian Fundora, Isaac Cruz, and Rolly Romero.
Sebastian is said to be out for most of the year. Isaac Cruz is scheduled to fight on the August 3rd show, backed by His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, leaving only Rolly Romero, who's coming right off that loss to Isaac Cruz. If Rolly can get himself together, maybe he can fight Ryan.
Is that gonna do big numbers, though?
Might do all right, because the people that purchase a Ryan Garcia fight, Ryan Garcia's fans, they're paying for Ryan.
They're not really paying for Devin. They wouldn't really be paying for Rolly. They're paying for Ryan.
This is not your atypical hardcore boxing fan that purchases a fight for the spirit of competition and watching it play out. This is a younger generation of supporters and fight fans who really like Ryan. For whatever reason they do, and they show up in the numbers.
Because here they are again, in the absence of Gervonta Davis.
It's almost like Gervonta Davis's fans wanted to give him all the credit for the show having done as well as it did last year, with no regard for Ryan Garcia, who I've maintained made all the difference. You never did $1 million or $500,000 before you fought Ryan.
You're not going to do that in your next fight.
So how in the fuck are you the face of boxing?
You're not.
People are just lying to themselves and others to put Gervonta on that pedestal when the numbers tell a different story.
I don't like Ryan.
Just saying, he stands a better chance of becoming the next face of boxing than Gervonta Davis. Men's junior middleweight news. Trainer Brian Bomac McIntyre says Crawford is nearing the greatest ever tier.
He's already part of a very short list of fighters who have seen themselves crowned 2-time undisputed champions in the 4-belt era.
Terrence's trainer, Brian McIntyre, didn't mince words on Wednesday when he described the historical company Crawford would join if he captures an undisputed championship in a 3rd weight division. Crawford would share the title as the greatest ever with the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson, Floyd Mayweather, who we just talked about, and others. McIntyre said you have to rank him in the top 5 of all great fighters. McIntyre told a small group of reporters following a press conference in Manhattan, New York, to announce Crawford's August 3rd match with Israel Madrimov for the WBA and WBO interim junior middleweight titles from LA BMO Stadium in August. That's Ray Robinson, Terrence Crawford, Floyd Mayweather, fighters like that. You have to put his name in there.
Some people don't want to.
The same people who were criticizing Terrence Crawford's resume before the Spence fight are still criticizing him afterwards, trying to diminish his victory over Errol, saying that's the only solid fighter that he fought. It's that rationale that led you morons to think Errol would beat him.
You boxing geniuses.
I think Errol is probably done fighting Terrence, Brian McIntyre told a small group. I think he's moving on and looking to continue his legacy.
Well, before he fights anybody else in the boxing ring, he's got to fight his old trainer, Derek James, in the courtroom.
I don't know how much more fighting, in the fighting sense of the word, in the boxing ring, Errol has left in him. But this is the guy who a lot of people got behind instead of Terrence.
Terrence wasn't dysfunctional enough for them, toxic enough, unprofessional enough for them. He hadn't flipped enough Ferraris.
There were not enough empty Henny bottles on Terrence's dresser as opposed to Errol, which is why they got behind Errol. And look at how that turned out. Now, Terrence is fighting Israel Madrimov. He's dangerous, McIntyre said. They call him the Triple G of 154. We have a lot stacked against us. Terrence wants to be considered the best in and outside of the ring, so you must take challenges like this to prove to the world that you are one of the best to lace up the gloves.
That's what it takes.
While Crawford didn't stop to talk to reporters following the press conference on Wednesday, he did tell Chris Mannix on a DAZN live stream his thoughts on possibly reigning over a third weight division. It's not a priority, but it's up there, Crawford said. You have to understand, there's potentially 2 belts on the line August 3rd. If Fundora doesn't fight me after this, I'm WBO and WBA champion. If he does fight me, that's 3 belts on the line and only 1 more to collect.
Terrence has never been big on doing media.
Speaking to them and dealing with them, perhaps it's because the media had their hand.
Their role.
Underneath it all, everybody knew that Errol was putting distance between himself and Terrence Crawford, that while Terrence was struggling to find fighters to fight at 147 pounds, willing participants, the media knew.
But they celebrated Errol anyway.
I feel like the reason, or at least the part of the reason, that Terrence has never been big on doing a lot of media or dealing with them is because he knows that the media is fickle.
So are the fans.
They were happy to celebrate Errol Spence Jr. and the PBC, those PBC fighters, freezing Terrence Crawford out for years, only so that when Terrence finally proves them wrong and destroys their prize stallion, they could try to talk him down, talk it down.
Make excuses.
Remember that in the post-fight press conference that immediately followed the fight, Terrence had a few choice words for Ellie Seckbach of ES News. Big Errol Spence Jr. fan.
Terrence is aware
That if you presented that situation between Terrence and the PBC and how they were freezing him out, if you presented it any other way,
you're disingenuous.
they were freezing him out. You knew they were freezing him out. And even now that he's emerged victorious and he destroyed Errol Spence Jr., like I said he would, there's still an effort to diminish Terrence Crawford, everything he's done, and even who he's about to fight. Yes, there are those out there who quite preemptively are talking down Israel Madrimov with no prior knowledge of this fighter because they don't want to give Terrence credit.
That's what it is.
So I don't expect Terrence to be a fan of the media, doing the rounds with them and mincing words. He's had a love-hate relationship with them. He's had a love-hate relationship with the boxing community at large. I'm sure he's aware that there are people who have supported him throughout. But at the moment,
He's not going to waste time on the media or waste time on people's opinions because the people blow hot and cold. The mob is fickle.
he said, I'm on the hunt. They hate to see me at the top. They tried to block me from every angle, and I still came out on top. When God's with you, who can be against you?
Not but a few weeks ago, the Haymanites were celebrating what looked to be a potential Spence versus Fundora fight. They were actually celebrating that Errol Spence Jr. might get to skip ahead of Terrence Crawford in the line.
They were happy about it, chastising Terrence Crawford for not kissing the rings and not bowing down to Al Heyman or his PBC, chastising him for being a maverick and doing things his own way. In the end, it seems to be paying off for Terrence. In all the ways, it's not paying off for Errol Spence Jr.
Crawford.
These people that are so hypercritical of Terrence Crawford, they don't want to see him doing well. They don't want to see him succeed because every time that he does, it's proof that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Crawford.
It's not what they predicted. It's not what they wanted. It's not what they want.
Crawford.
Instead of coming around to the idea that maybe they've been wrong all this time, and Terrence deserves a lot more credit than they've been giving him, they would rather tear him down, continue to tear him down. They can't forgive him for destroying Alcohol Spence. That's fine. Terrence Crawford has never been a slave to public opinion anyway.
He's always done things his own way, whether you like it or not. And so far it's worked out for him.
Without the adulation of his critics, without your support.
Keep supporting Errol. He needs it.
If that makes you feel better. But I told you from the very beginning, as soon as this fight became a hot button topic, that if these two guys ever fight, Terrence is gonna make it to where Errol shouldn't even be in the same ring with him.
Now he's moving on. I don't expect you to be happy about it.